For Telesur, I'm Cody Weddle in Caracas. We begin in Ukraine tonight, where tensions are mounting. Shelling by government troops killed 15 civilians in the Ukrainian city of Donetsk on Thursday. The rebel-held city remains under siege by government troops. The offensive has left thousands dead in Ukraine. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko canceled a state visit to Turkey on Thursday as he accused Russian forces of entering eastern Ukraine. Russian officials deny Kiev's claims of a Russian invasion. Poroshenko has ordered a mandatory military draft for the Ukrainian armed forces. Meanwhile, U.S. President Barack Obama says he will strengthen the United States alliance with Ukraine during the NATO summit next week. Obama also threatened new sanctions against Russia. New developments to report on the U.S. offensive targeting the Islamic State. Just before we came on the air, President Obama delivered a press conference where he announced that U.S. strikes against the Islamic State in Iraq will continue. Obama says he is seeking partners to possibly expand the mission into Syria.
And I've asked Secretary Kerry to travel to the region to continue to build the coalition that's needed to meet this threat. As I've said, rooting out a cancer like ISIL will not be quick or easy, but I'm confident that we can and we will, working closely with our allies and our partners. For our part, I've directed Secretary Hagel and our Joint Chiefs of Staff to prepare a range of options.
Islamic State announced Thursday that it has killed over 160 Syrian government troops. The UN says 43 peacekeepers were captured by gunmen during clashes in Syria. Western governments continue refusing repeated Syrian government offers for cooperation against the Islamic State. French President Francois Hollande on Thursday was the latest leader to rule out working with the Syrian government. Several Western governments have armed Syrian opposition groups in recent years. Staying with the Middle East, where the ceasefire in Gaza is holding. Life is slowly returning back to normal for Palestinians. Our correspondent Noor Harazin reports on how Gazans are adjusting to a new calm in the streets.
Life in Gaza returned to some semblance of normality on Wednesday as a long-term truce began, following a deal hailed by both Israel and Hamas as a victory in the 50-day war. Thousands of people in the coastal enclave enjoyed a welcome day of peace, during which there were no strikes on Gaza. I am more than happy to enjoy this truce. Life has returned to the streets of Gaza. People are out in the streets. I'm grateful that we are able to raise above all hardships. Moreover, more than 200 tons of aid from Saudi Arabia, Oman and Turkey arrived in Gaza via the Rafah border crossing with Egypt. Earlier, a World Food Programme aid convoy headed into Gaza from Egypt for the first time since 2007, carrying enough food to last 150,000 people 5 days. Meanwhile, Israeli forces fired warning shots near the northeastern Gaza Strip on Thursday. An Israeli army spokeswoman said warning shots were fired in the air after a crowd of Palestinians began throwing stones at the security fence. However, the Palestinian side denied the Israeli claims, stating that the Palestinian residents were only walking in the buffer zone. The Israeli security buffer zone around Gaza was meant to be reduced following Thursday's ceasefire agreement, with farmers initially reporting that they were able to cross their fields 100 meters from the border fence. As the life returns back to the streets of the Gaza Strip in the second day of the ceasefire, and as thousands of Palestinians are celebrating this occasion, there is still hundreds of thousands who are suffering the pain of being homeless and displaced. Noor Harazin, Telesur TV, Gaza.
And thanks to Noor for her ongoing reporting there. Ecuador is the latest Latin American country to deliver aid to the people of Gaza who are suffering following Israel's attacks. This solidarity with Palestine has met a strong pushback from some in the United States Senate. For more, we go to our Ecuador correspondent, Liz Sherfius.
The successful campaign Ecuador with Palestine, organized by civil society and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, resulted in 20 tons of medical supplies and other crucial donations that will be delivered to Gaza next week. The end of the campaign coincided with a letter by U.S. Republican Senators Marco Rubio, Bob Menendez, Mark Kirk, and James Reich, urging the governments of Ecuador, Brazil, El Salvador, Peru, and Chile to restore diplomatic relations with Israel.
But these men should give advice in their own house. They're not going to give the Ecuadorian government advice. Worse is this type of advice of a political nature.
Ecuador's support of Palestine throughout the 50-day Israeli Operation Protective Edge resulted in the opening of an embassy in Ramallah, and the Ecuadorian ambassador was recalled from Tel Aviv.
We are going to keep developing other agreements and also entering into strong bilateral relations. And we have a lot to give for Ecuador, and Ecuador also has much more to offer Palestine.
The response of Ecuadorians in solidarity with the people of Palestine resulted in double the initial estimated amount of aid to be sent to Gaza, which was projected to reach 10 tons. Despite the letters sent by the U.S. senators this past Monday, the Ecuadorian government will continue its commitments by supporting the Palestinian government and its people. Liz Schaefius, Telesur, Ecuador.
And thanks to Liz. Staying in Latin America, thousands of teachers continued to strike in Paraguay Thursday, demanding an increase in the education budget and their salaries. Protesters say the police fired rubber bullets at the demonstrations. A Telesur journalist was wounded in the clashes between the strikers and the police. Paraguay invests much less in education compared to other countries in the region. Teachers are paid the minimum wage and claim only 1/4 of schools have sufficient resources. Families and friends of the peasants' leader and regional coordinator of the Honduras Resistance Front, Margarita Murillo, gathered for his funeral on Thursday. Murillo was killed Wednesday following attacks by 3 armed and hooded men. Murillo was deeply involved in the peasants' movement in Honduras for almost 40 years. The Resistance Front, in which he was active, was established after the coup in 2009 that ousted President Manuel Zelaya. The Sao Paulo Forum continues in Bolivia today. The annual conference is a gathering of left-wing parties from Latin America and the Caribbean. Bolivia's vice president addressed the forum, emphasizing the importance of street mobilizations in keeping progressive governments in power.
American societies and revolutionary governments have achieved stability and governance, not only by following electoral mechanisms and respecting the institutionality of the parliament, the executive, and all other branches, but also achieving a revolutionary legitimacy, which is a fundamental component of revolutionary governance, with popular support and mobilization of the people in the streets.
And we end with a quick look at sports. Cristiano Ronaldo was named European Footballer of the Year on Thursday. It caps a remarkable season for the Portuguese forward. Ronaldo scored in the European Champions League final in May as his team won the title for a record 10th time. The title follows a long list of awards for Ronaldo, including World Player of the Year. Ronaldo is currently the highest paid footballer in the world.
It's amazing. My brother gonna put in my music.
More on those stories and others at our website, telesurtv.net/English. For Telesur English, I'm Cody Weddle. We'll see you tomorrow.